It's cold brew, by the way. Hi, welcome back to my channel. I know I haven't really been posting videos. I actually did record some last week, but I wanted to edit them, but I realized that I was severely out of focus, and I don't know how I can still make such a mistake like now. If this is your first video with me, hi, thanks for joining me, I guess. This is my really messy YouTube video where I try my best to make videos but I mean videos about books, but also in general just like things I like. Forgive the reflection. I mean, that's part and parcel of wearing glasses. Today's video is gonna be about my July TBR. Now, this is my first time doing a TBR, and I have no idea what the code of conduct is with regards to TBRs. But what I usually do is that I have a book that I want to read, and then I keep it on my TBR for like 6 months, and then I binge it in the last 2 weeks, and then I say that I took quite a long while to read that book. So I think this TBR culture is pretty good to keep me a bit more consistent in reading. I want to be really honest about it. I'm not like a very fast reader, plus the fact that I tend to choose non-fiction books that are a bit heavy on the details. That really doesn't help me, because I want to be able to glean as much as possible from the books that I'm reading. So reading it fast doesn't make sense to me at all. I'll just go straight into the books. So the first book that I'm reading is called Full Surrogacy Now, Feminism Against Family. It's written by Sophie Lewis. I found this book by a friend who was reading it, and I saw many great thoughts about it, so I felt like I should read it. I think ever since COVID happened and a lot of us moved back into the family, like our family homes, I've been thinking a lot about what the family means. Surrogacy isn't a topic that I've read a lot about, and so far it's been quite challenging because there is quite a lot of like background knowledge that you probably need to know. Like the author does name drop certain arguments or like prior thinkers in theories, and sort of writes back against that. That's very classic academic writing. So surely I wouldn't recommend this book if you're like new to feminist studies or like to gender studies. I think so far it's been challenging for me in a good way, and I've been highlighting a lot of great quotes and really trying my best to process it. If you're interested, check it out as well, add it to your TBR, I don't know. The next book that I'm also currently reading is Pleasure Activism, The Politics of Feeling Good by Adrienne Mary Brown. Like I mentioned maybe in my previous in the previous video about cynic reads, I was reading, like the books that I was reading had a lot of pessimism, had a lot of like, oh, the world is really going to shit and people are dying. And I mean, that's true, but that's also not very helpful when you want to figure out exactly how you can enact change. So I picked up this book because this book has been on my to-read list for a very long time, but I decided to prioritize it now because I feel like it's pretty important now. The idea of politics, the politics of pleasure, how that plays into activism. I tend to get anxious a lot, and that kind of locks me into a position where I can't really do anything productive. This book kind of draws a lot on black feminist work and theory, and it draws a lot on the power of the erotic. And I know that sounds really weird, but trust me, like if you go further into it, you understand that it's not just about like the sex, but it's really about understanding one's sexuality. And I think especially in feminism, there's a lot of work regarding understanding the female sexuality and reclaiming it as a form of empowerment. I felt like that was a tenet of feminism that I want to go back to, and to understand how I can empower myself as well. So I'll see whether this book has any sort of lessons to impart to me, I think a lot of feminist writing in the top charts today, they tend towards like journalistic writing, maybe even autobiographical writing, and that's nice and really affirmative, and it's really pleasant to read. But I really enjoy grappling with a bit more of like a feminist framework, theory heavy kind of writing once in a while. So I guess this month is that once in a while. I think it's really important to refresh and to really understand the theories and the works that come before you. So those are the two feminist works that I'll be reading this month. Okay, as for Singlit, I actually have 2 books that I am currently reading. As in I haven't started, but I am going to read them in July. And the first one is called If It Were Up to Mrs. Dada by Carissa. I am just curious to check it out. I mean, I haven't really read Singlit novels. Majority of what I've read are short stories and poems. So I'll be super excited to figure out exactly how this novel plays out. And I know fundamentally like Carissa has a great writing style, so I'm kind of excited to see like support a local writer. I mean, this book doesn't have a lot of ratings yet. I think it's quite recently released, so I'm excited. I mean, it's so rare that I pick up a fiction book just because, you know. Anyway, the last book that I have on my Singapore category is the Naysayers book club, 26 Singaporeans You Need to Know. This is edited by Vincent Simon Paul. I don't know why I want to pick this up, but I just felt like to balance out the heavier readings for my feminist category, I thought that I want to read a bit more of an accessible non-fiction Singapore based book. I feel like I want to read up more on the history and the influential figures in Singapore that are not just, you know, what we read in our education, because it can get a bit skewed sometimes, you know, like the historical figures and influential figures that you've been taught to remember. And I remember last time in the library, there was this book that I was browsing. I can't remember it now, but I'll find the picture of it. And it was something about like the 50 Singaporeans, like the 50 people who like contributed to Singapore, but they were not like Singaporeans, they were like immigrants or something like that. I thought that such a book was great because it kind of gave me a bit of like representation, because, you know, I'm not like directly from Singapore in the sense that my immediate family migrated here, so it's really nice to have that representation. And I wanted to figure out if there are more people like that, or, you know, what are the influential figures like across the demographics in Singapore that I am not aware of. And I thought this book would be a good starting point. Plus it has a lot of great reviews, so I'll be checking that out. Okay, the last category is like super random. It's just this other book that I've been reading since last week, and since it was already the end of June, I decided to just read it throughout July. And it's called The Body, A Guide for Occupants by Bryson. I think this is a fairly popular book. I've seen it a lot on like the bestseller list. It's just a good old like science non-fiction book. You know, it's kind of a classic genre of its own, and I thought it would just be a good counterbalance to all the other books that I'm reading currently. And it's just nice to go back to the so-called basics of just having facts like thrown at you. So in total, I have like 5 books that I'm reading for this month, and I think realistically I can hit that. I have a couple of books here and there that I might read once I finish these 5, but honestly I'm in no rush at all. I don't know what else people say in these videos other than the fact that they are excited to read these books. If you enjoyed it and you liked my list, I guess you can add me on Goodreads. Oh, and I've created a bookstagram. Wow, amazing. So the link to my bookstagram is in my description box below. Honestly, I'm not a very fun and exciting person, so I don't know what you're getting into. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I guess like this video, subscribe for more content like this. Like I mentioned, I'll be doing a lot more like non-fiction and Singlit on my channel, because that's really what I love to read. And cool. Yeah. How do I end this thing?